I'm Donald, 35 years old, and until last month I thought I had it all figured out. After years of hard work, I finally bought my dream SUV worth $72,000. Then, one morning it wouldn't start. Security footage revealed the unthinkable, my own sister pouring soda into my gas tank. What hurt more? My mom defended her. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any knife ever could. If you've ever felt stabbed in the back by those who should love you most, stick around. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to join me through this painful journey of family betrayal and silent revenge. Growing up in suburban Ohio, I was always the responsible one. My childhood home sat in a middle-class neighborhood with neatly trimmed lawns and friendly neighbors who knew each other by name. As the oldest of 3 children, I understood early on that I was expected to set an example. My parents worked hard, dad as a construction manager and mom as an elementary school teacher before she retired 5 years ago. They instilled in me the value of hard work, education, and financial responsibility. I took those lessons to heart. Throughout high school, I maintained excellent grades while working part-time jobs at the local grocery store and later as a computer repair technician. When college acceptance letters arrived, I chose the state university with the best computer science program that also offered me a partial scholarship. Those 4 years were challenging, balancing a full course load while working 20 hours weekly to minimize student loans. But I graduated with honors and landed an entry-level position at a growing software development company. Over the next decade, I climbed the corporate ladder steadily. Beginning as a junior developer, I advanced to senior developer, then team lead, and now serve as the technical director for our company's most profitable division. Each promotion came through dedication, late nights, and consistently delivering results. My colleagues respect me, and my bosses value my contributions. I built this career brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. My sister Amanda couldn't be more different. 3 years younger than me, at 29, she's always been the family darling. Where I was responsible, she was spontaneous. Where I was cautious, she was adventurous. These qualities weren't inherently bad, but they came with a complete lack of accountability that our parents, especially Mom, enabled throughout her life. Amanda breezed through high school with average grades and an active social life. She enrolled in college at an expensive private university, switching majors 3 times before dropping out during her junior year. College isn't for everyone, Mom said, defending her decision. Meanwhile, no one acknowledged that Amanda had racked up substantial student loans with nothing to show for it. Since then, Amanda's employment history reads like a revolving door: 6 months as a restaurant hostess, 3 months in retail, a year as an administrative assistant before being let go, brief stints in real estate and insurance, sales. Each job ended with the same narrative. Her boss was unreasonable, her coworkers were jealous, the environment was toxic. Never once did Amanda consider that she might bear some responsibility. The financial pattern was equally predictable. Every few months, Amanda would call Mom in tears about rent, car payments, or credit card debt. Mom would then call me explaining that your sister is going through a tough time and suggesting I help out. I did many times despite knowing I'd never see that money again. Just until she gets back on her feet was the perpetual promise. That day never seemed to arrive. My relationship with Mom has always been complicated. Deborah Williams, now 58, raised us after Dad passed away from a heart attack when I was 17. She did her best, under difficult circumstances, and I respect her for that. But her parenting style with Amanda and me couldn't have been more different. While I received tough love and high expectations, Amanda received endless second chances and emotional support. When I earned scholarships, Mom said I was lucky. When I landed promotions, they were because your company recognizes talent. But my accomplishments were always somewhat diminished, expected rather than celebrated. Meanwhile, Amanda's smallest achievements, holding a job for 6 months, making her car payment on time, were praised as significant milestones. Still, I tried to maintain a good relationship with Mom. I called weekly, visited monthly, and helped financially when needed. I wanted her approval and worked hard to earn it. Perhaps that's why her reaction to the SUV incident cut so deeply. The past year had been transformative for my career. After leading a major project that increased company revenue by 22%, I received a substantial promotion to technical director. This came with a significant salary increase, stock options, and greater responsibility. After a decade of renting, I finally purchased a home in a desirable neighborhood with good schools and parks nearby. Though I'm single without children, I wanted room to grow and a solid investment. With my housing situation stable, I allowed myself to consider another dream, a luxury SUV I'd admired for years. This wasn't an impulsive purchase. I researched extensively, compared models negotiated with dealers, and saved diligently for 3 years to make a substantial down payment. When I finally drove it home, a gleaming black SUV with leather interior, advanced safety features, and cutting-edge technology, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This vehicle represented years of hard work, smart financial planning, and professional success. Perhaps naively, I expected my family to share my joy. I drove to Mom's house the weekend after the purchase, excited to show her what her oldest son had achieved. As I pulled into her driveway, I felt a mixture of pride and anticipation. This moment symbolized something important, tangible proof that her parenting, at least with me, had produced successful results. What I didn't realize was how this symbol of my success would trigger a chain of events that would forever change our family dynamics. The black SUV sitting in Mom's driveway would become the catalyst for betrayal pain and ultimately a long overdue reckoning within our family. The day I brought my new SUV to Mom's house was sunny and mild, a perfect spring Saturday in Ohio. I had spent the morning carefully washing and detailing the vehicle until its black paint gleamed like obsidian. The leather new car smell still lingered inside, and every surface was immaculate. As I pulled into Mom's familiar driveway, I couldn't help smiling. After years of driving practical, budget-friendly cars, this vehicle represented a significant milestone. "Mom," I called as I entered using my key. "Come out and see what I got." She emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Donald, you're early for dinner. I haven't even started the roast yet." "I wanted to surprise you," I explained, gesturing toward the driveway. "Come see." Mom followed me outside, her expression shifting from curiosity to surprise as she took in the luxury SUV. She circled it slowly, running her hand along the pristine finish. "This must have cost a fortune," she finally said, her tone carrying an undertone I couldn't quite place. "$72,000, I admitted. But I got a great interest rate, and I've been saving for the down payment for 3 years. Mom pursed her lips. "It's very flashy. Do you really need something this expensive? You could have helped your sister with that kind of money. She's struggling to make rent again this month." My excitement deflated instantly. Not even a moment of celebration before Amanda's needs entered the conversation. Still, I kept my tone light. "I work hard, Mom. I wanted to treat myself for once, and I do help Amanda when I can." I suppose she conceded, heading back inside. It's just a lot of money to spend on a car when family members are having financial difficulties. That comment stung, but I brushed it aside. Mom had always been practical about money, I reasoned. She didn't understand that this purchase was financially sound given my income and savings. The real shock came when Amanda arrived for dinner an hour later. She spotted the SUV immediately and froze in the driveway, keys in hand. "Whose car is that?" she demanded as she entered. "It's Donald's," Mom answered before I could. "He just bought it." Amanda's face underwent a remarkable transformation, surprise, followed by a flash of something darker, before settling into a tight smile. "Wow, big brother. Must be nice to throw money around like that. How much did that set you back?" $50,000, 60. "It was a significant investment," I said carefully, not wanting to trigger more jealousy by sharing the actual figure. "Investment?" Amanda scoffed. "It's a car, Donald. It loses value the second you drive it off the lot. But I guess when you're making the big bucks, you don't have to worry about little things like that." Throughout dinner, Amanda peppered me with questions about the SUV's features, but each question carried an edge. "Does it have the massage seats?" "No, I thought for that price it would have everything." Or, "I bet the insurance is insane. How much are you paying monthly just to drive that thing?" Mom did little to redirect these comments, occasionally nodding, as if Amanda was making reasonable points. By dessert, the conversation had shifted to Amanda's financial struggles with her apartment, and her boss unfairly reducing her hours at the boutique where she worked. I don't know how I'm going to make rent next month, she sighed dramatically, glancing at me. Some people have all the luck with jobs and money. It's not luck, I countered, finally feeling defensive. I've worked consistently for the same company for 12 years. I saved for this car for 3 years. Must be nice to have a job that actually pays well, Amanda retorted. Some of us weren't handed those opportunities. Nobody handed me anything, I said, struggling to keep my voice even. We both had the same opportunities growing up. Mom interjected then. Everyone's path is different, Donald. Amanda is trying her best with the opportunities available to her. The message was clear. My success was somehow unfair, while Amanda's struggles were circumstantial and deserved sympathy. I changed the subject, but the tension remained palpable throughout the evening. As I prepared to leave, Amanda followed me to the driveway. Hey, can I borrow your new ride sometime? Just to run errands or something? My car is making a weird noise again. The request was bold considering her attitude throughout dinner. I don't think that's a good idea right now, Amanda. It's brand new, and I'm still getting used to it myself. Her expression hardened. Seriously, you can't even let me borrow it for a few hours. What are you afraid? I'll scratch your precious new toy. That's not it. Save it, she interrupted. God forbid you share anything with your family. You've always been selfish, Donald, always thinking you're better than everyone else, with your fancy job and your fancy car. She stormed back inside before I could respond. Driving home, I felt a mixture of confusion and hurt. What should have been a joyful day had turned sour, and I couldn't understand why my achievement had triggered such hostility. Over the next 2 weeks, I noticed the tension escalating. Mom called more frequently than usual, often mentioning Amanda's financial struggles in passing. The boutique cut her hours again. She's worried about her car repair bill. Her landlord raised the rent. Each conversation seemed designed to make me feel guilty about my purchase. Meanwhile, Amanda stopped responding to my texts entirely. When I called, she would answer briefly and find excuses to end the conversation quickly. Her social media told a different story, however. She was actively posting about weekend trips and dinners out, seemingly not as financially strained as Mom suggested. Despite the growing tension, I wanted to maintain family harmony. I decided to host a barbecue at my new home the following weekend, hoping that a change of venue might improve the atmosphere. I invited Mom Amanda, my younger brother Jason, who lived out of state and couldn't attend, and a few close friends. I spent hours planning the menu, cleaning the house, and preparing the backyard patio. It'll be nice, I told myself as I fell asleep the night before the barbecue. Everyone will relax, and we'll get past this weird tension. I had no idea that by morning relaxation would be the furthest thing from my mind, and that my relationship with my sister and mother would be forever altered. The morning of the barbecue dawned bright and clear. I woke early, excited to host at my new home for the first time. After a quick shower, I reviewed my shopping list. Hamburger buns, extra ice, more charcoal, and a few last-minute items for the homemade potato salad. Mom had taught me to make years ago. Grabbing my keys, I headed to the garage with a spring in my step. This gathering would reset things with my family. I'd even planned to offer Amanda a ride in the SUV, thinking it might help ease her apparent resentment. The moment I turned the key in the ignition, I knew something was terribly wrong. Instead of the smooth, powerful purr, I'd grown accustomed to, the engine made a horrible grinding sound, followed by a series of alarming clicks. When I tried again, the engine turned over, but immediately began making a sputtering noise before dying completely. What the hell, I muttered, trying a third time, with the same result. This time I noticed something else. A strange, sweet smell coming from the vents. It wasn't the normal new car smell, or even an engine odor. It was almost like soda. Panic rising, I popped the hood and looked inside, though I wasn't entirely sure what I was looking for. Nothing appeared visibly wrong to my untrained eye. I checked the ground beneath the SUV. No obvious leaks or puddles. My heart sank as I pulled out my phone and called the dealership's emergency service number. I'll send someone right away. Mr. Williams, the service manager, assured me after I described the symptoms. But I have to warn you, from what you're describing, it sounds like there might be something in your fuel system that shouldn't be there. 90 agonizing minutes later, A technician named Rick arrived. He was thorough and methodical, checking various components before taking a fuel sample. His expression grew increasingly grim as he conducted his tests. "Mr. Williams," he said, finally setting down his tools, "I've found the problem, and it's not good news. There's a foreign substance in your fuel tank, almost certainly some kind of sugary liquid, probably soda. It's contaminated your entire fuel system and has likely caused significant damage to your engine." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Soda in my gas tank. How is that possible? "Someone would have had to deliberately pour it in," Rick explained gently. "This isn't something that happens accidentally." But who would I stopped mid-sentence as a terrible suspicion formed? "How much will this cost to fix?" Rick grimaced. "We won't know the full extent until we get it back to the shop, but you're looking at thousands of dollars. The fuel system will need to be completely flushed. The fuel injectors are likely damaged, and depending on how long the engine ran with this stuff in it, you might be looking at more extensive engine repairs." As Rick arranged for a tow truck, I sat on my front steps in a daze. Who would do this? The answer seemed impossible, yet increasingly likely. I remembered my neighbor Mark mentioning recently that he'd installed a new security camera system that covered part of my driveway. Heart pounding. I walked next door and knocked. "Hey Donald, what's up?" Mark greeted me cheerfully. "Ready for your barbecue?" "Actually, I have a strange request," I replied. "Your security camera, does it record footage of my driveway?" Mark's expression turned concerned. "Part of it, yeah. Why did something happen?" "Someone tampered with my car. I'm trying to figure out who." 20 minutes later, I sat in Mark's home office staring at his computer screen in disbelief. The night vision footage clearly showed a familiar figure approaching my house around 2 in the morning. Amanda, wearing a hoodie, but unmistakable from her walk and profile, crept up to my SUV, looked around furtively, and then unscrewed the gas cap. She pulled a large bottle from her bag, a 2-liter soda bottle from the size, and spent nearly 3 minutes carefully pouring its contents into my gas tank. I felt physically ill watching the footage. My own sister deliberately sabotaging my car, a car she knew I had worked years to afford. The betrayal was so profound I could barely process it. "Do you know her?" Mark asked, clearly uncomfortable. "It's my sister," I managed to say, my voice hollow. "Jesus, Donald. I'm sorry." Mark awkwardly patted my shoulder. "Do you want me to save this footage for you?" I nodded numbly as he transferred the video to a USB drive. Driving was impossible now, so I called to cancel the barbecue, making excuses about a sudden illness. Then, hands shaking, I called Amanda. She answered on the 4th ring. "What is it, Donald? I'm busy." "Did you pour soda into my gas tank?" I asked directly, my voice strangely calm, despite the storm raging inside me. A brief pause. "What? No? Why would you ask me something like that?" "My car won't start. The mechanic found soda in the fuel system. It's caused thousands of dollars in damage. And you immediately blame me." Her indignation sounded rehearsed. "That's so typical. Something goes wrong and you point the finger at your screw-up sister." "Amanda, I have security footage." The line went silent for several seconds. Then, "Whatever you think you saw, you're wrong." She hung up. Numb and reeling, I called the one person I thought would help make sense of this situation, Mom. Surely she would be as shocked and disappointed as I was. Surely she would help hold Amanda accountable. "Donald, I was just about to leave for your barbecue," she answered cheerfully. "I had to cancel, Mom. Something's happened." I explained about the car and the security footage, my voice breaking slightly, as I described watching Amanda deliberately pour soda into my gas tank. I expected gasps of shock, expressions of sympathy, perhaps anger at Amanda's destructive behavior. What I got instead stopped me cold. "Are you absolutely sure it was Amanda, Mom?" asked her tone defensive. "Those cameras can be very grainy at night." "Mom, it was definitely her. I could see her clearly." "Well, if it was her, and I'm not saying it was, there must have been some misunderstanding. Amanda wouldn't just do something like that without a reason." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A reason. What possible reason could justify destroying my car? You know how sensitive she is, Donald. You buying that expensive car when she can barely make rent. It probably felt like you were flaunting your success in her face. Not that I'm excusing her behavior, she added quickly, though that was exactly what she was doing. The conversation deteriorated from there. Mom suggested I was partly to blame for showing off with my new car. She minimized the damage, suggesting it probably won't cost that much to fix. When I told her the preliminary estimate was around $8,000, she actually said, "Well, you can afford it. Amanda certainly can't." By the time I hung up, I felt doubly betrayed. Not only had my sister deliberately damaged my property, but my mother was actively defending her actions and suggesting I should simply absorb the financial loss because I was more financially stable. As I sat alone in my house, surrounded by the barbecue supplies that would go unused, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The family dynamic I had accepted for years, where I was expected to give endlessly while receiving little in return, suddenly seemed not just unfair, but actively destructive. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my anger. And beneath that anger was a steely resolve. This time would be different. This time, there would be consequences. The next morning, after a restless night plagued by anger and disbelief, I made a decision. Rather than letting this situation fester, I would confront it head-on. I called a local print shop and had them create a high-quality screenshot from the security footage showing Amanda clearly in the act of pouring liquid into my gas tank. I also had the entire video copied to my phone. By early afternoon, I was pulling into Mom's driveway in a rental car. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had rehearsed what I would say, determined to remain calm and rational, despite the emotions churning inside me. Mom answered the door wearing an apron, clearly in the middle of baking something. The familiar smell of her cinnamon rolls filled the house, a jarring contrast to the confrontation I knew was coming. "Donald, I didn't expect you today," she said, wiping flour from her hands. Come in, I'm making your favorite." "Is Amanda here?" I asked, ignoring the attempt at normalcy. Mom's expression shifted slightly. "She's in the living room." "Why?" Without answering, I walked past Mom into the living room, where Amanda sat scrolling through her phone. She looked up, and for a split second, fear flashed across her face before she composed herself. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone deliberately casual. I placed the photograph on the coffee table between us. "I think we need to talk about this." Amanda glanced at the image and quickly looked away. "I don't know what that's supposed to be." "It's you, Amanda. At 2:17 in the morning 2 nights ago, pouring soda into my gas tank." My voice was steady, but I could feel heat rising in my face. The mechanic confirmed it. "The damage estimate is around $8,000. "That could be anyone," she scoffed, though her voice lacked conviction. Mom picked up the photograph, studied it, then set it down with a sigh. "Donald, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish here? Even if it is Amanda, which I'm not convinced it is, coming over and making accusations, isn't going to fix your car." I stared at her in disbelief. "So, you're both just going to deny what's clearly on video?" "Fine." I pulled out my phone and played the footage Mark had given me. The night vision recording clearly showed Amanda approaching my car, looking around furtively, and then carefully pouring liquid from a large bottle into my gas tank. As the video played, Amanda's demeanor changed. Her shoulders slumped, and she stared at the floor, no longer trying to deny what was undeniable. "Okay," she finally said when the video ended. "So, maybe I did it. You deserved it." "I deserved to have my car destroyed?" I asked incredulously. "How exactly did I deserve that?" Amanda's expression hardened. "You know exactly what you did. Showing up with that ridiculous expensive car, rubbing your success in my face when you know I've been struggling. It's always been like this. Donald the perfect son, Donald the successful one, while I can barely make ends meet. You could have helped me with my rent, with my car payments, but instead, you buy yourself a $72,000 toy to show off." I was speechless. The twisted logic behind her justification was staggering. "Amanda," I finally managed. "I've helped you financially dozens of times over the years. I've given you money for rent, for car repairs, for credit card bills, money I've never seen again, by the way. And this is how you repay me, By destroying my property. I didn't mean to destroy it, she shot back. I just wanted to cause you a little inconvenience. Make you understand what it feels like to struggle for once in your perfect life. Before I could respond, Mom interjected. Donald, you have to admit that buying such an expensive car was a bit insensitive given Amanda's situation. You were showing off. I turned to face her stunned. So, this is my fault. I worked hard for years to afford that car. I saved, I budgeted, I earned promotions. And because Amanda makes poor financial choices, I'm not allowed to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Of course, you can enjoy your success. Mom said, her tone patronizing. But family members should help each other. You know Amanda's been having a rough time lately. Help each other, I repeated. Like how Amanda helped me, by pouring soda in my gas tank. Like how you're helping me now, by defending her. I'm not defending what she did. Mom insisted, though, that was exactly what she was doing. I'm just saying I understand why she felt frustrated. And really, Donald, you can afford to fix the car. It's not like this is going to bankrupt you. That statement hit me like a physical blow. The implication was clear: because I had been financially responsible, I should simply accept the destruction of my property without complaint. So Amanda should pay no consequences for what she did, I asked quietly. Of course there should be consequences, Mom said, though her tone lacked conviction. Amanda apologized to your brother. Amanda rolled her eyes but muttered, sorry, with all the sincerity of a toddler forced to share a toy. And I pressed what? About financial responsibility. The damage she caused will cost thousands to repair. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Well, you know Amanda doesn't have that kind of money right now. Maybe you could pay for the repairs, and Amanda could. I don't know. Help you with something in return. The conversation was becoming surreal. Mom, if a stranger had done this to my car, it would be considered vandalism, a crime. They would be arrested and forced to pay restitution. But because it's Amanda, I'm supposed to just pay for it myself and let her off with an insincere apology. Don't be dramatic, Donald, Mom chided. This is family. We handle things differently in family. Differently, yes. But there still needs to be accountability, I insisted. Amanda suddenly stood up. You know what? Fine, I admit I did it. I was angry because you always have everything so easy. You have a great job, a nice house, and now this fancy car while I can barely pay my bills. So yes, I poured soda in your gas tank. I wanted you to feel what it's like to struggle for once. Rather than being contrite, she seemed almost proud of her reasoning. What shocked me most was Mom's response. See, Donald, Amanda is being honest about her feelings. Now you two can work through this. Work through this, I echoed. Mom, she deliberately damaged my property. This isn't about feelings, it's about actions and consequences. I think you're overreacting, Mom said dismissively. It's just a car, Donald. Material things can be replaced. Family is what matters. If family matters so much, I countered, why are you both treating me like this? Why is it okay for Amanda to damage my property and for you to excuse it? Because you always land on your feet, Amanda burst out. Everything always works out for perfect Donald. Meanwhile, I'm drowning in debt. My credit is ruined, and I might lose my apartment next month. But God forbid anything inconvenience the golden child for even a day. The conversation spiraled further as Amanda detailed her financial problems. Credit card debt, overdue rent, car payments she couldn't make. With each revelation, Mom looked at me expectantly, as if Amanda's irresponsibility was somehow my problem to solve. Actually, Mom said, her tone brightening as if she'd had a brilliant idea. Instead of Amanda paying for your car repairs, which she obviously can't afford right now, maybe you could help her with her credit card debt. It's about $6,000, which is less than your repair estimate anyway. That way everyone wins. I stared at my mother in utter disbelief. My sister had deliberately damaged my property, causing thousands in damage, and Mom's solution was for me to give Amanda money. The absurdity of it was almost laughable, except there was nothing funny about this situation. That's not happening, I said firmly. Amanda needs to take responsibility for her actions. Both the damage to my car and her financial situation are the result of her choices. You've always been so judgmental, Amanda spat. So high and mighty on your pedestal. You think you're better than me because you have a better job and more money. This isn't about being better than you, Amanda. It's about basic respect for other people's property. What you did was wrong, and there need to be consequences. Or what she challenged. What are you going to do, Donald Sue? Your own sister. Call the police. Go ahead. Mom will never forgive you if you do that. She was right, and she knew it. The implied threat was clear. If I pursued any formal action against Amanda, I would be cast as the villain in our family narrative. Mom would side with Amanda as she always had. I think you should go, Donald, Mom said quietly. We're all upset right now and saying things we might regret. Come back when you've calmed down and we can discuss this rationally. Rationally. As if I was the irrational one for being upset about thousands of dollars in deliberate damage to my property. As I gathered my things to leave, a cold realization settled over me. This dynamic would never change unless I changed it. For years, I had accepted my role as the responsible one, the one who helped and never asked for help in return. I had allowed Amanda's behavior and Mom's enabling to continue unchecked. But not anymore. As I drove away from Mom's house, I wasn't just leaving a toxic conversation. I was leaving behind a lifetime of allowing myself to be taken advantage of. Something had broken inside me that couldn't be repaired with apologies or time. Something fundamental about how I viewed my family and my place within it. In that moment of clarity, I made a decision. If Amanda and Mom wouldn't respect my boundaries willingly, I would enforce them myself. And I would do it in a way that would finally make them understand that actions have consequences even within a family. Especially within a family. The drive home from Mom's house was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel of the rental car so tightly, my knuckles turned white, and my mind raced with the painful exchange that had just occurred. The betrayal felt physical, like a weight pressing against my chest, making it difficult to breathe. When I finally reached home, I sat in my driveway for several long minutes, trying to process everything. My sister had deliberately damaged my property. My mother had defended her actions and suggested I should bear the financial burden of repairs, and both of them seemed to think this was reasonable because I was financially stable while Amanda was not. The unfairness of it all was staggering. For years I had accepted my role as the responsible one, the one who helped without complaint, the one who could be counted on in a crisis. But this crossed a line I couldn't ignore. This wasn't just taking advantage of my generosity. This was active sabotage followed by a complete lack of remorse or accountability. I finally went inside and poured myself a stiff drink, something I rarely did. As the bourbon burned its way down my throat, I called my closest friend Brian, who had known my family for over a decade. She did what Brian exclaimed after I explained the situation. And your mom defended her. That's insane, Donald. I know, I said wearily. I keep thinking I must be missing something. How can they not see how wrong this is? Because they're used to you, letting things slide. Brian replied bluntly. Look, I've watched this dynamic for years. You give, they take. You forgive, they repeat. At some point you have to break the cycle. How Amanda basically dared me to take legal action knowing Mom would never forgive me. There are other ways to establish boundaries, Brian said thoughtfully. What you need is leverage something that makes them understand that actions have consequences without necessarily involving the police. Brian's words resonated with me. Leverage. That was exactly what I needed. But what leverage did I have over Amanda? As I nursed my drink, memories began to surface, patterns I had ignored or excused over the years. Amanda had borrowed money countless times. But there was something else. Something I had pushed to the back of my mind, because addressing it would have caused conflict. 3 years ago, when Amanda was between apartments and jobs again, Mom had convinced me to co-sign on a car loan for her. It's just until she establishes better credit, Mom had assured me. She really needs reliable transportation to get to interviews. You won't have to pay anything. Against my better judgment, I had agreed. The car wasn't anything fancy. A used Toyota with reasonable payments, but I remembered signing the paperwork. What had happened with that loan? I pulled out my laptop and logged into my financial accounts, something I should have done long ago. What I discovered sent a chill down my spine. The car loan was still active with my name as the primary borrower. Amanda had made sporadic payments, but the account was currently 60 days past due. The late payments had been affecting my credit score for months without my knowledge. But that wasn't all. As I dug deeper into my credit report, I found other accounts I didn't recognize. A store credit card opened 18 months ago, a personal loan from 6 months back, and a line of credit with a furniture store. All were in varying states of delinquency, and all had my name attached to them. Identity theft. My own sister had been using my personal information to open credit accounts, presumably with Mom's knowledge or at least tacit approval. No wonder Amanda had been so hostile about my new car. She had been secretly exploiting my good credit for years, and my purchase likely triggered both guilt and resentment. I sat back stunned by the discovery. The betrayal went far deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't a one-time act of vandalism. This was years of financial exploitation. And given Mom's reaction to the car incident, I suspected she knew about at least some of it. The next morning I called in sick to work and made an appointment with a lawyer who specialized in financial fraud and identity theft. The meeting was eye-opening. "You have several options," explained Jennifer Morris, a sharp-eyed attorney with 20 years of experience. "You can file a police report for the identity theft, which would likely result in charges against your sister. You can dispute the fraudulent accounts with the credit bureaus and lenders. And for the car damage, you can file an insurance claim and let them pursue subrogation against the responsible party." "Would that mean my sister could face legal consequences?" I asked. "Potentially, yes. Insurance fraud investigators take vandalism seriously. If they determine someone deliberately damaged your vehicle, they could pursue charges or a civil claim against that person." I explained my reluctance to directly involve law enforcement, given the family dynamics. Jennifer nodded understandingly. "Family situations are complicated, but there are still ways to protect yourself without immediately escalating to criminal charges. First, you need to shut down her access to your credit and finances. Then you can decide how to address the existing damage." For the next hour, we developed a comprehensive plan. I would: 1. Place a freeze on my credit with all 3 major bureaus to prevent any new accounts from being opened. 2. Formally dispute all fraudulent accounts and remove myself from any joint accounts with Amanda. 3. File an insurance claim for my SUV's damage, providing the video evidence but without initially naming Amanda as the perpetrator. 4. Document everything in case I needed to take more serious legal action later. As I left Jennifer's office, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. I had always believed that family should support each other unconditionally, but I now understood that support couldn't be a one-way street. It couldn't mean sacrificing my own financial security and well-being to enable harmful behavior. Back at home, I began implementing the plan immediately. I froze my credit with Experian TransUnion and Equifax. I called each fraudulent account, explained the situation, and started the dispute process. I contacted my auto insurance and filed a comprehensive claim, sending them the video footage of the vandalism without specifying that the person was my sister. The most difficult call was to the auto lender for Amanda's car. I explained that I had co-signed the loan under duress and false pretenses and wanted to remove myself from the obligation. They were sympathetic, but explained that both parties would need to agree unless the loan was refinanced or paid off. "So I'm stuck with this responsibility unless Amanda agrees to remove me or pays off the car?" I asked incredulously. "I'm afraid so, sir. That's the nature of a co-signed loan. However, given the circumstances, you might want to consult with your attorney about options for demonstrating that the co-signing was done under false pretenses." It was a setback, but not an insurmountable one. Jennifer had warned me that extricating myself from joint financial obligations would be the most challenging part of the process. Still, I had taken the first crucial steps toward financial independence from my family's manipulation. That evening, I sat on my back patio, watching the sunset and reflecting on everything that had happened. The anger was still there, but it had crystallized into something colder and more focused. I wasn't just angry at Amanda for damaging my car, or at Mom for defending her. I was angry at myself for allowing this dynamic to continue for so long. For years I had enabled their behavior in the name of family harmony. I had given money I knew would never be repaid, offered help, that was never reciprocated and ignored red flags that should have been obvious. My desire for Mom's approval, and my hope that Amanda would eventually become more responsible, had blinded me to the reality of our relationship. No more. The plan I had set in motion wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my autonomy and establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. It was about finally saying no to being exploited by the people who should have valued me the most. As darkness fell, I made one final decision. I wouldn't confront Amanda or Mom about the identity theft immediately. Instead, I would let the consequences of my actions unfold naturally. When Amanda couldn't open new credit accounts, using my information, when the auto insurance investigators contacted her about the vandalism, when the car lender sent notices about the delinquent payments, only then would they understand that the rules had changed. Sometimes I realize the most powerful move isn't a direct confrontation, but a silent reclaiming of one's power. I had been the family ATM and safety net for too long. Now it was time for Amanda and Mom to face reality without my financial cushion to soften the blow. With that thought, I finished my drink and went inside feeling lighter than I had in days. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, it was truly my own. The following week unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony as my plan set into motion. Monday morning began with a series of phone calls to every financial institution where I held accounts. I closed joint accounts removed, authorized users, and changed all passwords and security questions. For accounts that couldn't be closed immediately due to outstanding balances, I restricted access and requested notifications for any transaction attempts. "Mr. Williams, are you sure you want to remove all authorized users from these accounts?" asked the representative from my main bank, her voice tinged with concern. "This will prevent anyone else from accessing these funds." "I'm absolutely certain," I replied firmly. "No one should have access to these accounts except me." By noon, I had effectively sealed off my financial world from outside interference. Anyone attempting to use my information or access my accounts would hit an impenetrable wall. It felt both liberating and sobering, like installing deadbolts after discovering your house keys had been copied without your knowledge. Tuesday brought the first ripple effect. My phone rang just after lunch, Mom's name flashing on the screen. "Donald, what's going on with your bank accounts?" She sounded confused rather than angry. Amanda went to withdraw money for her electric bill from the joint account, and they said she didn't have access anymore. So Amanda had been regularly withdrawing money from our joint account, an account originally created when I was helping her budget years ago. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed still stung. "I've restructured my finances," I replied calmly. "That account is closed now." But Amanda needed that money. Her electricity might get shut off. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, surprised by how steady my voice remained. But Amanda is an adult. Her bills are her responsibility. "Donald, this isn't like you. We're family, we help each other." "Yes, we are family," I agreed, which is why I expected better than having soda poured in my gas tank and my personal information used without my permission. A moment of telling silence followed. "What do you mean, your personal information?" "I think you know exactly what I mean, Mom. I've found numerous accounts opened in my name that I never authorized. Did you know about those too?" Another pause. "Amanda might have mentioned borrowing your good credit once or twice, but she was desperate, Donald, and she always intended to pay everything back." The casual admission was breathtaking in its audacity. Identity theft, a federal crime dismissed as merely borrowing good credit. Intentions don't pay bills, Mom. And what's happened goes beyond borrowing. It's fraud. "You wouldn't press charges against your own sister?" Mom said, her tone now carrying an edge of worry. "I'm not discussing what I might or might not do. I'm simply securing my finances as I should have done long ago." The conversation ended shortly after, with Mom clearly unsettled by my newfound resolve. I felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. Years of conditioning had taught me to feel responsible for Amanda's and Mom's financial well-being. Breaking that pattern wouldn't happen overnight. Wednesday brought the next development. My insurance company called to inform me they had reviewed the video evidence and determined the damage to my SUV was clearly intentional vandalism. They would cover the repairs minus my deductible and would be pursuing the responsible party for reimbursement. We've identified the individual in the video, the claims adjuster explained. Our investigation team will be contacting them directly. Do you have any additional information that might assist us? I provided Amanda's contact information, but asked them to handle the matter according to their standard procedures without special consideration. The adjuster assured me they would proceed professionally. By Thursday, the dominoes were falling faster. Amanda called her voice a mixture of panic and anger. What the hell, Donald? Some insurance investigator just called me about your stupid car. They're saying I could be liable for the full repair cost and might face criminal charges for vandalism. Is this your doing? I filed an insurance claim with the video evidence, I replied evenly. What happens next is between you and the insurance company. You know I can't afford to pay for those repairs, and if I get charged with vandalism, I could lose my job. You should have considered those possibilities before pouring soda in my gas tank. I can't believe you'd do this to your own sister, she said, her voice cracking with what sounded like genuine distress. Mom was right. You only care about yourself and your precious money. The accusation was so wildly hypocritical I almost laughed. Amanda, you've been using my personal information to open credit accounts without my permission. You damaged my car deliberately. And, somehow, I'm the selfish one for protecting myself. Those accounts were just temporary, she protested. I was going to pay them all back once I got on my feet. You know I've been struggling. Everyone struggles, Amanda. The difference is, most people don't commit fraud or vandalism when things get tough. She began crying then, loud dramatic sobs that had always worked to manipulate Mom and me in the past. I felt a familiar tug of guilt, but steeled myself against it. This pattern had played out countless times. Amanda does something wrong, faces consequences, cries until someone rescues her, then repeats the behavior. I'm hanging up now, I said firmly. I suggest you talk to the insurance investigator and work out a payment plan for the damages. Friday brought the most significant development yet. I received an official letter from my credit card company confirming they had completed their fraud investigation and removed 3 unauthorized accounts from my credit report. The letter specifically stated they had determined the accounts were opened without the cardholder's knowledge or consent, and that they had reported the fraud to the appropriate authorities. Similar letters arrived from 2 other financial institutions. Each one represented a black mark on Amanda's record and a step toward clearing mine. My credit score, which had taken a hit from her delinquent payments, would gradually recover. The weekend passed quietly, but Monday morning brought a frantic call from Mom. Donald, you have to help. Amanda just got a letter saying the car loan is in default and they're threatening repossession. They said you removed your financial support. Can you call them and straighten this out? The car loan has been in default for months. Mom, Amanda hasn't been making the payments she promised when you convinced me to co-sign. But she can't lose her car. How will she get to work? The same way millions of other adults without cars do public transportation, carpooling, or ride-sharing. Or she could start making her car payments. She doesn't have the money right now. She's going through a difficult time. She's been going through a difficult time for the past decade, Mom. At some point, Amanda needs to face the consequences of her choices. Mom's voice hardened. I never thought I'd see the day when you'd turn your back on family like this. Your father would be so disappointed. The invocation of my late father was a low blow designed to maximize guilt. In the past, it would have worked. This time, I felt only a sad clarity. Dad taught me the value of hard work and responsibility, I replied quietly. I think he'd be disappointed to see his daughter committing fraud and vandalism and his wife enabling it. I have to go now, Mom. I hung up feeling both drained and strengthened. Standing up to family was infinitely harder than standing up to strangers, but also more necessary. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation continued to evolve. Amanda, faced with actual consequences, perhaps for the first time in her adult life, cycled through various strategies: angry accusations, tearful pleas, attempts to get mutual friends to intervene, and finally reluctant acceptance. The auto insurance company had given her two options: pay for the repairs in monthly installments, or face a civil lawsuit and possible criminal charges. She agreed to the payment plan, though not without numerous complaints about her impossible financial situation. The car lender, after multiple missed payments, initiated repossession proceedings. Amanda, suddenly motivated by the imminent loss of her vehicle, somehow found the money to make 3 back payments and arranged a modified payment schedule going forward. Most surprisingly, after 3 weeks of minimal contact with Mom, I received a text message that suggested the first hairline crack in her unwavering support of Amanda need to talk to you about Amanda's spending habits. Some concerning patterns. Call when you can. When I returned her call, Mom sounded subdued. I've been looking through some of Amanda's financial documents trying to help her organize her debts. Donald, I had no idea how many accounts she had opened in your name. This goes beyond just borrowing your good credit occasionally. I know, Mom. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Why didn't you say something sooner? I sighed, recognizing the subtle attempt to shift blame. I did say something when I found out about it, but you defended her actions and suggested I should just help her financially instead of holding her accountable. A long pause followed. I suppose I did, she finally admitted. I've always worried more about Amanda because she seemed more vulnerable than you. You were always so capable, so self-sufficient. It was easy to think you didn't need the same support. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest Mom had ever come to acknowledging the imbalance in how she treated her children. It was a start. By the 1-month mark, the landscape had shifted dramatically. My car was repaired and back in my possession. My credit was gradually recovering as fraudulent accounts were removed from my report. Amanda, facing actual financial responsibility perhaps for the first time, had taken on a second part-time job and was making regular, if small, payments toward the damage she had caused. Most importantly, the power dynamic within our family had fundamentally changed. No longer was I the automatic solution to every financial crisis. No longer could Amanda or Mom assume I would sacrifice my own financial well-being to rescue them from the consequences of poor decisions. It wasn't revenge I had sought, it was respect. And sometimes, respect only comes when boundaries are clearly drawn and consistently enforced. The road to rebuilding our family relationships would be long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt we might be moving in the right direction, one where responsibility and consequences applied to everyone equally. As I drove my repaired SUV down the highway, windows down, and music playing, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom, not just from financial exploitation, but from the emotional burden of being eternally responsible for others who refuse to take responsibility for themselves. It was, I realized, the most valuable asset I had reclaimed in this whole ordeal. 3 months after discovering Amanda's betrayal, I sat in my living room reviewing the final letter from my credit monitoring service. All fraudulent accounts have been removed from your credit report, it stated. Your credit score has been restored to its previous standing. A simple sentence that represented countless hours of phone calls, paperwork, and emotional strain. I placed the letter in a folder labeled Family Financial Issues, a sterile title for what had been the most painful chapter of my adult life. The folder was now nearly empty. Most matters had been resolved. My car was fully repaired, my credit restored, and the financial entanglements with my family severed. The only remaining connection was the payment plan Amanda had reluctantly established with the insurance company, 24 monthly payments, to cover the damage she'd caused. The immediate crisis had passed, but the after effects continued to ripple through our family in ways I never could have anticipated. Amanda, faced with actual consequences for perhaps the first time in her adult life, had undergone a remarkable transformation, not overnight and not without resistance, but genuine nonetheless. Without access to my credit, or Mom's endless bailouts, she had been forced to confront her financial reality. The first month had been chaotic. She'd called me daily, alternating between rage and desperation. When that strategy failed, she'd enlisted Mom to intervene. When that too proved ineffective, she'd finally done something unexpected. She'd taken responsibility. It started small. She picked up additional shifts at the boutique where she worked. She found a weekend job at a local coffee shop. She sold designer clothes and accessories she'd purchased during more financially reckless times. Small steps, but significant ones, for someone who had always taken the path of least resistance. 2 weeks ago, I received a text message that would have been unimaginable 4 months earlier. Made my third payment to the insurance company today. On time and in full. For your information. No request for money. No complaint about how difficult it was. Just a simple statement of accomplished responsibility. I had replied with equal simplicity. Good job. Because it was a good job for Amanda, it represented a seismic shift in behavior. Yesterday, she had called with news that genuinely surprised me. I've enrolled in a financial management course at the community college. She said, an unfamiliar note of pride in her voice. The career counselor there is helping me explore certificate programs that match my skills. I might actually be good at marketing or event planning if I applied myself. That sounds promising, I had replied cautiously. Optimistic, but wary of falling back into old patterns. What prompted this? Honestly, hitting rock bottom. When the car almost got repossessed and I realized no one was going to swoop in and fix it for me, it was terrifying. But also kind of a wake-up call. She paused. I've been the family screw-up for so long, I started to believe that was just who I was. But maybe it's not. It was the most self-aware statement I'd ever heard from my sister. Whether it would translate into lasting change remained to be seen, but it was a start. The transformation in my relationship with Mom had been more complicated. For weeks after I implemented my financial boundaries, conversations were strained and brief. She vacillated between guilt-inducing statements about family loyalty and tentative acknowledgments that perhaps Amanda had taken advantage a bit. The turning point came unexpectedly during a rare in-person visit about 6 weeks after the incident. Mom had invited me for dinner, just the two of us, no Amanda. I'd accepted with trepidation, expecting another attempt to restore the old dynamics. Instead, over dessert, Mom had looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read and said, I found a box of your father's old journals in the attic. I've been reading them. Oh, I replied, unsure where this was heading. He wrote about you a lot, about how proud he was of your responsibility, your work ethic. He worried sometimes that I leaned on you too much after he got sick, that I put too many adult burdens on your young shoulders. She twisted her wedding ring, which she still wore 15 years after Dad's death. He was right. I did lean on you too much. And I never stopped, even when you were grown. The admission left me momentarily speechless. Mom had never acknowledged this dynamic before. After your father died, I was so afraid of failing as a single parent, she continued. Amanda was always more emotional, more demanding. It was easier to focus on the squeaky wheel and assume the quiet one was fine. She reached across the table and took my hand. I convinced myself I was being a good mother by protecting Amanda from consequences. But I wasn't protecting her. I was crippling her. And I was taking you for granted in the process. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase years of imbalance or the pain of her taking Amanda's side in the vandalism incident. But it was a genuine acknowledgement of the dynamic that had shaped our family for so long and that meant something. I've enabled her for too long, Mom continued. We both have in different ways. You by rescuing her financially, me by rescuing her emotionally, and making excuses for her behavior. So what now, I asked. Now we try something different. I've told Amanda she can't live with me if things get tough again. I've stopped offering money every time she mentions a bill. It's hard, every instinct I have is to protect her. But I'm trying to remember that real protection means helping her develop the skills to protect herself. Over the subsequent weeks, Mom had largely kept her word. There had been a few slips. Old habits die hard. But she'd made a consistent effort to treat Amanda as an adult, responsible for her own choices. She'd even begun rebuilding her own financial independence, taking a part-time job at a local bookstore and creating a budget for the first time in years. As for me, the journey had been equally transformative. The initial anger and sense of betrayal had gradually given way to something more nuanced, a mixture of cautious hope for my family's growth and a newfound appreciation for my own boundaries. I had always defined myself as the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who could be counted on in a crisis. That identity had become so intertwined with my self-worth that setting boundaries had felt selfish, almost villainous. Breaking free from that mindset had been surprisingly difficult. A conversation with Brian had helped put things in perspective. You know, he'd said during one of our regular dinners, being reliable doesn't have to mean being a doormat. You can be someone people count on without letting them take advantage of you. How do you draw that line? I'd asked. By remembering that true generosity comes from choice, not obligation. When you help someone because you want to, that's generosity. When you help someone because you'll feel guilty if you don't, or because they've manipulated you into it, that's exploitation. That distinction had resonated deeply. I hadn't stopped being generous or caring. I'd simply started ensuring my generosity came from genuine choice rather than manipulation or guilt. I'd made anonymous donations to causes I believed in. I'd helped a colleague move when his plans fell through last minute. I'd even begun mentoring a young developer at work who reminded me of myself 10 years ago. The difference was that each of these acts came from a place of free choice rather than coercion or obligation. And paradoxically, choosing to give freely had made giving feel joyful again rather than burdensome. As I closed the nearly empty folder and placed it in my desk drawer, I reflected on the most important lesson I'd learned through this painful experience. Love and enabling are not the same thing. True love for others and for oneself involves boundaries, respect, and accountability. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop shielding them from the consequences of their actions. My relationship with Amanda and Mom would never be the same, and that was actually a good thing. The old relationship had been built on unhealthy patterns that hurt all of us in different ways. The new relationship, still evolving and fragile, had the potential to be something stronger and more authentic. I walked to the window and looked out at my SUV, parked in the driveway, now restored to its original condition. The vehicle that had once symbolized only personal achievement now represented something more valuable: the courage to stand up for myself, even when it was difficult. The wisdom to recognize that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop rescuing them. The understanding that family love should lift everyone up, not pull anyone down. The road ahead would have its bumps and detours. Real change never follows a straight line. Amanda might backslide. Old patterns might resurface. Trust would take time to rebuild. But for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about our family's direction. Not because everything was perfect, but because we were finally addressing the real issues instead of papering over them. Some relationships can only heal after they've been broken open and their dysfunctional patterns exposed to light. It's a painful process, but a necessary one. The soda in my gas tank had caused significant damage, but it had also catalyzed a long overdue reckoning that might ultimately save our family. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. And if you know someone who might benefit from this journey, consider sharing it with them. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's often the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for those who need to grow. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own relationships.